It's this one.
Have a view of ourselves.
It was on just a minute ago.
Is it the middle button?
Oh, do I need to do the roll call or is that on? Okay. Okay.
Still have a mayor.
Well, since there's only one person here, I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting. And welcome everybody. Let's see, so today we have Matthew Bogart. Okay, thank you. Erica Habera and Levi Hill is here for staff, and it looks like all the commissioners are here, but you can do the roll call if you'd like.
Sure. Chair Rath,
Here,
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Here.
Commissioner Barlow,
Here.
Commissioner Collum,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Pizell, and Commissioner Smith Crivello.
Here.
Great.
Okay.
All members are present. You've already announced the staff members present. If you'd like, I can go ahead and remind the public how to participate.
okay, sounds good.
Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open the meeting up to consent agenda items, which are the minutes. The first minutes are from the field trip, July 8th. Are there any comments on that? Do I have a motion to approve?
I so moved.
Okay, Gerlin and Kathy second. All in favor? Aye.
And I'll abstain since I wasn't present.
And then the July 11th meeting, any comments on that? Nope.
Like to read from the minutes.
Okay, on the minutes.
The commissioner comment on packet page 8. Has talked about the Oak Grove neighborhood, and I talked about the size of the ADUs. And I also talked about the color, that the colors always match the original.
Do you have your?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Should I repeat that?
Yes.
Okay, on
Yes.
packet page 8, Commissioner comments, I talked about the Oak Grove neighborhood and that ADUs are sometimes larger than the respective original homes, but also are the same color as the original homes. So that's my.
Alright, we can make those
addition.
corrections.
Okay.
Any other comments? I have one, actually. It's, I find these minutes to be pretty general. And so on, let's see, the same page as page 8, we talked about, we made some suggestions on how to improve the design, and the applicant stated they were not interested in considering one suggestion was moving the addition away from the house, and they flat out said, no, we're not doing that. And the other one, I think, actually, I think Kathy made that, or somebody else made that. And the one that I had suggested was to consider changing the fenestration, the sizes of the fenestration, because it wasn't compatible with the house, and they refused to consider that as well. So I think those items are important, just because if someone appeals the decision, it would be good to have that in the minutes.
And
I have my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Geraldine.
On that same issue, I was the one, I think that one, the fifth short paragraph down. I don't think that first part of it was what I said. It says, I believe the addition was well set apart from the front house. It was a good modern addition. I don't know what that means, and I'm not sure that's the way I said it. I do remember asking if they had considered making it more of an ADU or separate, and the answer was that they were one family and they wanted to live as one family. They didn't want to be in two separate houses. And so it was their choice to have the addition connect in order to have that happen. So I don't understand the first part. It said Commissioner Smith Travella believed the addition was well set apart from the front house and was a good modern addition. Well set apart sounds to me like I said it was apart, and it wasn't. It's connected. You know, so it's a little confusing, I think.
Sure. So the
But
recording secretary typically prepares the minutes based off the video of the meeting. So perhaps it was unclear in the recording. So what we can do, we can either strike that comment from the minutes if you don't feel that characterizes what you said.
But the second part, I did ask them if they had considered an ADU
Right.
separate, having it separate. And they said that wasn't their intent. They saw themselves as one family sharing one house.
Okay.
So, saying that I think would be appropriate. And I think that was part of what Carol was referring to.
Okay.
And Julie, did you have something?
I was just going to clarify, kind of opining on the comment that we said last time and this time about a little bit more detail. One of the things that was noted, and I think it's just important to express, is on page 7 of the packet, when there's a planning manager, he'll present the agenda report and responded to questions regarding Mills Act, et cetera, et cetera. And then the one specific one I'm commenting on is the page and terminal peer review and associated historic preservation report. I mean, that's an accurate sentence, but I think it's important to clarify that question was about whether or not the peer review is a review of the applicant prepared historic preservation report or whether or not it's standalone. And I think the clarification was that there are 2 separate reports. And I think it's just important to just remind everybody that that really is kind of like the policy, and we're not trying to evaluate just a single report, that we get to choose which one we felt was more accurate. So I didn't really understand that prior to the meetings, and so I appreciated that clarification. But it's also a good reminder of just process here in Monterey.
Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we accept the minutes as amended for July 11th.
I can second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay. All right. So motion has been passed. Let's see. Now that I'm completely lost here. Okay. So the next item is any general public comments that are not on the agenda. And I only see one person. Are you here for the project, or
But now,
are you here for an agenda item, or?
yeah.
Okay, so we don't have any. Are
We'll
there any
check online as
public-
well.
I have one more question, and I'm sorry I didn't ask.
Uh, I'm-
Last time.
I'm sorry, we're just checking for general public comments for items not on the agenda real quick online.
There's one attendee online, however, their hand is not raised.
Okay.
Geraldine, is this regarding the consent items,
Well,
or?
it was just in the, and it was just in writing it was about the minutes again. My question was, we made a motion to approve the minutes. And so the motion didn't carry because it didn't receive a majority vote. Did the motion, so there was a second, I'm just trying to remember, but then
Oh, that's right.
did we call for a vote or did?
We did a second vote, as I recall, and it was clarified that even if you weren't there at the first meeting, you could approve it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just kind of wondering about. Thanks.
Okay. Was that in the minutes? I don't remember.
No. I don't think so.
So could we add that to the minutes too, that there was a second vote for the, or do we need to do that? I don't know.
So again, the action minutes are primarily to record the actual action that was taken. So we can record it if the commission feels it's necessary, but the minutes did reflect that the minutes were approved.
Okay, all right.
Great.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so back to general public comments, and we don't have any. So let's move on to the agenda item to consider 603 and 605 Hoffman Avenue, a historic permit amendment application for alterations to the historic dwelling and amendment of the historic preservation report.
May I, just a point of clarification, maybe from staff. I live nearby. I live 0.2 miles from it. According to Google, it's more than 1,000 feet. I think I'm okay. Yes, participating in the comment. Okay, thank you. Just didn't want to, I know there was a conflict distance, but it's not that. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Confirming you said you left more than 1,000 feet?
About 1,050 or something. Okay.
That'll work.
Thank you. Okay, Matthew.
I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Buggart, and I'm an associate planner with the City of Monterey's Planning Division. And today we're here to talk about 603 and 605 Hoffman Avenue for a historic permit amendment and historic preservation report addendum amendment. The recommendation from city staff is that the HPC adopt the resolution to approve both the historic permit amendment and adopt the amended historic preservation report. The property itself is located in the New Monterey neighborhood at the corner of Hoffman Avenue and Belden Street. It is a duplex, 603 and 605. The general plan designation is medium density. The zoning is R35H2, H2 indicating that it is of local importance, and this is one of our properties that are in a Mills Act contract with the city. Some background on it. The Rezone and Mills Act for the property was approved July 7th, 2020. The city council added special conditions. As part of that approval, there were three main things. One was to remove the aluminum siding to expose redwood siding. Two, to replace the aluminum windows with wood sash windows reflective of the time period. And three, replace exterior doors with appropriate wood doors. On May 12th, 2022, HPC approved the historic permit for those improvements. And since that time, all three of those things have been conducted at the property. The approved alteration for the site was to replace those existing aluminum windows. One example included on the left with the sashed windows. And as part of that approval, this is a screenshot from that approval to size all doors and windows to fit existing openings. This is how the property looked on the left, and there have been a number of improvements to how it stands today on the right. A Mills Act inspection was conducted by staff last year, and some inconsistencies were noted in window sizes, and notice of these were provided to the property owner. The applicant provided a returned memo from the architectural historian who had worked on both the Mills Act contract and the project approval regarding compliance with the SOI, the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and treatment of historic properties. The inconsistencies that were identified by staff were a reduction in the size of this window, there were 5 window adjustments that were identified. So a reduction of this window, you can kind of see the edge of the roof line here, and it was brought in a little bit away from the door. Another one, the smaller window here was dropped down a little bit here. These 2 windows, there was a smaller window and a larger window. And today, both of these windows are of similar size. And another item, a smaller window closer to the rear of the structure, you can see that it's slightly above this notch in the pipe here. And as it stands today, the window goes down to a little bit below that notch in the pipe. So the 5 windows that were identified that had adjusted sizes, each of them did follow the recommendation from the architectural historian regarding the period, the sashes reflective of the period, and the document provided by that architectural historian indicated that the improvements were consistent with all SOI standards for rehabilitation. The side elevation reflects the larger voids that were covered by earlier incorrect exterior wall cladding. The forms are consistent with the period example and improve the period appearance, and that the minor changes were a product of the return to more period appropriate double hung window framing. The historian's report also indicated that the current fenestration enhances the historic design of the building envelope along with the original wood siding instead of the previous metal siding, and that the changes met the intent of the Secretary's rehabilitation standards by returning it to an appearance similar to how it would have looked during that time. For the historic preservation report requirements, HPC must find that the amended historic preservation report includes and covers all items 1 to 5 required of historic preservation reports. The 5 of those are listed out in the draft resolution and agenda report. There's a little bit of text there, so we didn't copy paste all of it into here. And for the historic permit itself, the historic permit amendment, the proposed alterations to be found consistent with the SOI standards for rehabilitation as described in that report, including standards 1 through 10. The main 2 that applied to the window alterations were 2 and 9 regarding the exterior alterations and historic character and the historic integrity of the property. With the input from the architectural historian and consideration of the amendments, staff's recommendation is to approve the 603-605 Hoffman Avenue Historic Permit Amendment to allow these alterations and adopt the amended historic preservation report. With that, that concludes staff's presentation. If you have any questions, I am here, and also the applicant is here.
Do we have any questions? So Joe,
I think, can you go back 3 slides, I think? Where it starts with the proposed. That, no. Forward. It goes there. So I just want to understand, there are some proposed alterations that you wish them to make.
There are
What this states, the proposed alterations. But then it says, were found consistent.
yes, since this
So
is
it's
a
confusing,
since
isn't
this
it?
is a retroactive permit, the alterations have been made.
So they're not proposed. Are they? If
They have-
have
They're
been made-
proposed, so what's being asked is that they're proposed amendments to the approved historic preservation report.
So is that stated that way? This
Mhm.
looks like, it looks like there are alterations that are being proposed.
The report is clear that the work's been done and that the applicant is now retroactively seeking a historic permit and thus the amendments to the historic preservation report.
Well, I'm just asking if this paper matches what you just said. it looks to me that this statement talks about proposed alterations.
So
These, in fact,
Are you pointing at the slide on the screen?
it says the proposed alterations. Proposed has a sense of future about
They're
it.
proposing it to this commission to approve.
Well, it does not say that we're approving it retroactively. It says the proposed alterations were found consistent, which is a different statement. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't see, as I was reading it, I found it a little confusing because.
Okay, is
it
there a
appeared that
question?
There were alterations.
Is there a question that I
is
can
the-
help you understand?
Well, I'd like to see the writing match what you want us to do.
Well, I
I'd like
can't
to
change
say
the
it's
slide.
retroactive.
So this is a slide on a presentation. I won't be able to change that, but what I can do is answer any questions to help clarify what's being proposed by the applicant today. And then we can make sure that we're abundantly clear whenever a motion is made, if we get to that point.
Yeah, but you understand my question.
Just stay on the
What I'm
slide.
looking for is matching the paperwork to what we're doing.
And the paperwork
is.
is the draft resolution that's in your packet. So that's the paperwork. What you're seeing on the screen is a slide that's been made a part of the presentation.
Any other questions? Okay, Geraldine? go
Can
ahead.
you show me where in the resolution it says it's a retroactive resolution? I found on 5, on packet page 19, the only proposed material change aside from will be and that still has a future sense to it. So
So the resolution has a series of whereas statements to give a full background of when the permit was originally approved, when the permit amendment was applied for. It also notes that the historic preservation ordinance requires that any alterations proposed require this commission's approval. It notes that the applicant's qualified architectural historian has concluded that the alterations are consistent with SOI standards. The resolution is worded clearly that the work has already been performed.
I just want to point out the.
It's in your packet, so this is on packet page 16.
Or even page 15, I have that highlighted about retroactive Levi. In
Fantastic.
conclusion, that line there.
Yes, the staff recommendation on the final page of the staff report reads, in conclusion, staff recommends that the HPC approve the historic permit amendment to retroactively approve the exterior alterations and adopt the amended historic preservation report.
Is that on?
Page 15 of your packet.
Mhm.
On page
15.
15?
It's at the very end, in conclusion.
Right here.
Mhm.
Retroactively approved. So Levi, what you're saying is that slide has no legal significance, just this is what matters, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I was trying to communicate, abbreviate in the slides.
Okay,
I have
okay. go
a
ahead.
question. We have no photos of this building before the 1950s when this aluminum siding was put on. Is that correct?
Correct. From the report that was provided during that last
Mhm.
item, it was documented somewhere that it had a wooden siding prior to when the metal cladding was put on. But the actual image of the site, I did not see in the file.
So we don't actually know what the building looked like as far as fenestrations and the building was broken into 2 apartments, I'm guessing I think I read in the 50s.
Yes.
So at some point, they also added an entrance. I'm guessing those
To the front.
stairs up the side. So it's not exactly a pristine 1916 house.
Correct.
So the other question is, when they took off the aluminum siding and it I'm not sure the way it was written, it was clear. So where they put the windows back in, were those original in the wooden sides of the house, or were larger holes covered up by the aluminum siding?
From the report that was provided by the historian, in addition to brief conversations that I have had with both the applicant and the historian, when the metal siding was removed, it was apparent that there were different window sizes throughout time. However, I was not there myself, so those questions may also be better presented to the applicant.
I've got one other question. It looked to me like the windows on the front didn't have the double hung look, that they were just clear, and maybe it went by too fast. Oops. So the one, yes, that one. Is that,
So it was previously an aluminum window
Yeah.
and was replaced with the sashed window.
yes, but it's not double hung. Or is it?
It
Is it?
does appear to be double hung here. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And that
it
wasn't the
was.
slide I actually was thinking of, but I'm fine. I think double hung windows are leaky, but
I mean, we don't have a photo of the front elevation, right?
I don't in this PowerPoint. But I'm,
It's fine.
yeah, and I'm not going to quibble about the double hung.
when the inspection was done, there weren't any significant issues found with the ones on this side.
Okay,
It was the ones facing the camera here and then on the opposite side of the
Okay.
building that are included in the other photos.
okay. Could you go through the photos? Yeah, but slower.
Yes.
Okay, well, I can see that that is double hung, and you went past another one or two, I think. Okay, I think that's the one, and it is double hung.
Yeah, I
there.
think it's the
Uh,
dark
when
trim
it
work
went
and
past-
dividers
went-
makes it challenging to
Okay.
see.
All right.
Any other questions, Carolyn?
Did you receive any letters from anyone?
None.
Okay.
There was one individual who reached out about possibly attending the meeting, but no inquiries about the project.
One person told me they were gonna write a letter. There was not a problem, but I just wondered if you received any letters.
I hadn't received any public comments on this project.
Anything else? Okay, would the applicant like to come up and answer some questions or make a presentation?
He's not sure.
So
Question for you.
I was given this picture here to be an example of the double hung windows that were period, right? And that's what we built. I also have some information here, if you're interested, on how double hung windows of that era were made. So what you have is weights and cords. And so on each side of the window, as you look at it from the exterior, you'll notice that in these Victorians that there's 1x6 flat casing. And the reason they have that is there's weights and cords that go down there, and periodically the cord would break. And so you'd have to go back and replace it. So you'd pull that casing off. So on this particular project, you had to go from the outside in because it was wrapped in aluminum, but it didn't have room for like the corner moldings, didn't have room for the casing that goes on the window. And so what they did was they expanded it into the pockets when they put the aluminum windows on. And then they covered it up with that siding. So it was, peel it, see what you got. And that's why the windows don't appear to be the same size, because those aren't historical windows.
The old ones.
No, the aluminum ones.
That's what I meant. the
I mean,
old ones.
It
Could
was,
could you identify?
it was like a crime scene investigation is what it was.
Sir.
Yeah, could
See, yes,
you, excuse me,
Oh, I'm Don Whitaker. I own it. But anyhow, so you have to, peel away the layers and knowing how to build that particular style, work your way back to what makes sense. And that's what we did. And I think we did a good job, to tell you the truth.
It does look good. So, any questions besides, could you tell what the original windows, what the sizes were when you took off the aluminum siding? Or,
You mean the opening?
yeah, the openings?
No,
Were
I
they different?
didn't get into that because since it was altered so much. I mean, there's even an example where they cut that one on the north side that looks like I shrunk it. They cut the framing all the way to the door to enlarge that window. I actually have pictures of that. I took a few, but not many.
Okay.
Because I was on the right track. I didn't figure I'd have to justify doing it. But anyhow, so they're all double hung windows. They all have the horns on them like back in the day. Exterior looks just like any historical Victorian, with the wide casings and to cover up that pocket. So, and, when we took off the aluminum siding, it's obvious that the original siding was still there. We had to replace some of it, but all in all, I'd say we replaced maybe half of it.
Any questions, Julie?
Yeah. Did you order the windows after you removed the siding? So were you able to see kind of the original or modified?
Well, I
Windows.
made the windows.
You made 'em.
Okay. And yes, because knowing that there was a pocket on each
Yeah.
side. But like I said, you had to start from the outside and work your way
No, I get
in.
it. I understand.
Because even though it was an old house, it was done quite well. And until somebody got hold of it, kind of cut it up a little bit, but
Mhm.
we're bringing it back to what it should be. To where it'll be around another 100 years or so.
Jerome.
I'm trying to follow along and I kind of miss, it says that the applicant is Susanna Di Fatima Silva. She's the owner of Test of Time. It's an LLC. It's owned by a company.
Yeah.
And you are not, you don't appear to be Susanna. I didn't.
Really? That's a good guess right there. No, she's in Portugal right now.
And so what is your name, sir? I missed that.
What now?
What is your name? I missed.
My name's Don Whitaker.
Don Whitaker.
I'm a co-owner.
You're a co-owner. Okay, she didn't put it in your name.
Yeah.
Don Whitaker. And because I was trying to figure out if you're working on the project because you made the windows or if you are, it doesn't.
No, I made the windows, I made the doors, I'm making the cabinets, the trim, everything.
Okay. So you can kind of speak as a contractor.
I'm a contractor.
And you can speak as having an interest in the property. You're
Yeah,
speaking in both roles.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment? Is it time?
No.
to- No? Okay.
Not yet. Just questions for now.
All righty.
Well, I could say, well, how do you like it? Because you live right next to it.
That's the next step.
I'll wait for
We have 2 more steps. Yeah. So if there's no other questions, thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you.
very clear in my mind. Are there any public comments? Anything on the Zoom?
Once again, to find information on participating in this meeting's agenda, you can go to isearchmonterey.org. There's still one attendee online, however, their hand is not raised.
Okay, so we'll close the public comments. Now you can make your comment.
Kudos to you. I have lived in that area for a while, walk my dogs. I might have even walked them by your house today. And I followed the saga of what it was before then, what happened, which brings us to now. So I just want to say good job on the remodel. And I have to say it looks better now than it did prior to the fire, prior to that whole drama that was happening back then.
Yeah, we're gonna make it look a lot better too.
Okay, good.
Any other comments? I agree with Juan. I live near that area and it looks really good, I think.
Yes,
And I
I
think the windows were a real improvement.
Definitely. I agree with you. And the view is spectacular.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Okay. You need to make the motion though.
Oh, I move, sorry. I move to,
Here.
thank you. I move to follow the staff recommendation that the HPC approve the historic permit amendment to retroactively approve the exterior alterations and adopt the amended historic preservation report.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The motion has passed. Let's see here. This may be appealed within 10 days or 2 days for wireless applications. That doesn't
Yeah,
apply.
so this application will be appealable for 10 days to the planning commission. You can submit, you can find applications for appeal both on the planning website and in the planning office.
Thank you. All right. Okay, I'm going to open the meeting up to commission comments. Any comments? General comments?
Is,
Um,
yeah.
Am I missing something?
Don't we have
Yeah.
item 5?
don't
That's
we
correct.
have
Yes,
the-
there's another item.
Oh, there. Oh, right.
Way
right.
down
I'm
at the
sorry.
bottom.
I'm sorry.
We have a public appearance
Okay.
item as well.
It's like juggling up here.
So the second public appearance is to receive a Mills Act inspections informational report. And is there a presentation on that or just we
There's-
receive it?
There is a presentation if you'd like.
Sure.
Sure.
Optional presentation.
Page 80, correct? Okay,
Yeah.
All right. I am here to present for the Mills Act inspections that have happened over the past year and a half at this point. The annual inspection report at today's HPC meeting. The purpose of this is to give a very brief overview of the Mills Act, a summary of Mills Act properties in the city, contract inspection updates, and then anticipated next steps. Some background on the program. The first contract was in the year 2000. The property owner benefits from the reduction in property taxes, and the city is ensured that the historic building is preserved in accordance with the preservation report. Similar to what we just went through with 603, 605 Hoffman, ensuring that properties like that are improved and maintained over time. The total number of Mills Act properties in the city is 63. And here's a chart with a summary of how many have come into the city over time. This is also included in the staff report. Last year, in 2023, there were 4 that were recorded with the county. 3 of them went through you guys last year, and 1 was at the tail end of 2022. 828 Pacific Street, 875 Spencer, 414 Alvarado, and 581 Scott/Larkin. Entering into a Mills Act contract, the property must meet the requirements for H1 or H2 overlay zoning. Not all H1 or H2 properties are subject to a Mills Act contract. It's a little bit of a rectangle and square situation. The property needs to be identified by a qualified architectural historian to be significant, and the city needs to find that granting the contract will serve to offset the cost of maintaining the resource. The maintenance schedule must be received and approved through the city. That includes HPC and city council. Rezoning itself also goes through planning commission. This is what a standard maintenance schedule includes these days. It includes a summary of what will be done, how often it will be done, and then a rough estimate of how much it will cost in contract years, usually going about 10 to 20 years out. After that time, we simply depend on the frequency. However, some of the early ones did not have that defined Excel table assembled. For instance, 537 Houston Street had a long list of things that would be done with a one-time cost associated with it, and there's no frequency in which these things would be done. So most of these things for this property were done in like 2008, 2007 or so. And so now when we visit the property, I just start at the top and go down and basically ask, how's your masonry doing? How's your drywall doing? And go down the list. And it's still looking great. This is that particular property. It's been inspected entirely in compliance. There's no issues with it. It's a beautiful property, to be frank. Potential cancellation of the contract is currently the only mechanism that the city has to ensure compliance with the Mills Act. And we, as the city, may cancel a contract if the property owner has breached it, if the property owner has allowed the property to deteriorate, or has failed to restore or rehabilitate the property. And there is a relatively steep cancellation fee of 12.5% of the current property value. And there are exceptions for buildings destroyed by natural disasters. There are no middle grounds there. We don't have a warning system per se, other than words. And we will see if that changes in the future. For outreach, in the past, we have tried mailers and email and phone numbers to various property owners to get a hold of them, to visit the property with them on site. The last time that we went through this, we did a combination of those that we got a hold of and just trying to look from the street if we couldn't get a hold of them, go down the list and see visually what looked interesting there. And this round, we sent out a mailer and it had a QR code, so you could scan it with your phone, set up an inspection that automatically went to my schedule in Microsoft Outlook, and I could just show up on site. And it was much more successful, and we were able to visit all except for 2 sites this time, which was pretty exciting. There was also an update to how we saw the inspections, because the last time we paid a lot of attention to the amount of money associated with improvements, but come to find out, estimates from 2005 did not necessarily hold in to 2023. And more so it was, have you done the item? Does it look like there's any deterioration? Are there any retaining walls falling over, cracks in your concrete, etc.? So the 2 categories that we were most interested in are, is your property exclusively maintaining it? Have you done everything that was required to restore the property to a historic setting or install the plaque on the property? Activities that were required beyond just, maintaining the property. The other one was any properties that have outstanding restoration work to complete. So for instance, the aluminum windows, putting in the sashes, plaque installation, and so on. I will also note that since these had a 10 to 20 year outlook, some of them have anticipated activities 15 years out. So if they haven't done it yet, that's okay. It just needs to be done by the time it gets there. So they weren't considered out of compliance if they hadn't done the work yet. They just still have outstanding work that they will need to do to bring it into restoration. It's a little funky going through all 63 of these because they were all done a little differently over the past 24 years. But the properties in our city are very well maintained. 43 of the properties are considered just full-on maintenance. There's no outstanding things other than keep your landscaping up, keep your painting up, keep it looking nice. You don't have to do any more work to bring it into conformance. There were also 19 properties with outstanding work. That also includes the 4 from last year. The reason that I say that is these numbers were in the report and they're including a little extra. There are 19 properties that still have outstanding work to be done.
That's good.
And there are 2 that the city has flagged as no inspects for this year. It's a bit of a warning. And next year, if we don't get a hold of them, we may start to bring them to HPC for consideration and doing as much as we can to try and both get a hold of them and bring them into conformance. 73% are considered fully compliant. They look beautiful. There might be a cracked pavement tile or something like that, but general maintenance, house stuff comes up. So now I'm going to jump into a few properties just for some context. One of them is 801 Jefferson Street. It was entered into the Mills Act in 2009. It's at the point of maintaining the property. There were some retaining wall issues that they were required to do that would have been considered outstanding work. The retaining wall was slumping over. They did those improvements in 2015, 2016 or so. And at this point, other than doing some cleaning of the stones, any tiles that may be chipped, they are at the maintaining stage of their contract. And it looks beautiful. They got their plaque installed. It's great. One property that is right across the street over here, 554 Van Buren Street. They reached out to the planning department to ask if there were any requirements regarding painting the structure, and painting a historic resource, unless it's Adobe, it's a whole nother story. We don't require a historic permit for painting a site. Additionally, in the background documentation for this site, it indicated that it was a little bit more yellow and may have faded over time. So they were trying to bring in that little pop of color back to the property. 848 Via Murata was brought in 2003. And when it was inspected, it looked beautiful. They had done just about everything, but it would have been considered outstanding work because there was one tiny aluminum window at the most rear bathroom that needed to be installed. They got a historic permit through the planning division. I have not yet been back out to the property, but I know that they have followed through with trying to bring it into conformance. And once I go check it out, they'll be just considered maintaining at that point moving forward. And a more interesting one, 417 Alvarado Street. They got a historic permit for their windows. They had paint falling off and needed some repairs, and that could be an admin level review of no visual changes to the structure, just improvements, restoration work to it. Something that they are considering doing in the future is you can kind of see that it is very detailed. The roof line here is very detailed. And then up above it, it gets pretty flat with just some curlicues at the top. And that is from this metal structure here on the right that in talking with them, they may want to remove in the future. We have not received an application yet. They do not plan on doing that without approval through the city, but just something that may be coming through HPC in the coming year is some architectural updates to this property that is pretty beloved downtown. And down below, that vibrant white that you see, they needed to do some roof repairs and just fully have a brand new roof that was, in talking with them, a little expensive. It was also pretty neat to walk up there. And this one I'm just going to gush about for a little bit. The Marsh building at the corner here, walking through it, the Japanese Zen garden here with the replica dojo on the right is now used as a very grand and beautiful office. The tile work on it is gorgeous inside. The archways are well maintained and painted. The landscaping is beautiful. The steps leading up to a couple apartments, very well maintained, beautiful inside. There was mention of possibly removing these terracotta dragon heads because it was felt to the property owner that they looked a little out of place. So they may come through wanting to update that or change that. But they have not indicated that they would do so yet. The roof tiles here are all custom made, and because of that, they had them bulk made for the replacement tiles and the colors matching, and there are piles of them in a portion of the property to the right. And I wanted to glow about this property as a prep for the next slide, which is showing that despite being a beautiful property, there are maintenance things that still need to be done. And so this is a compilation of photos that were taken on site of things that are unique tiles. I mean, the tile on the far left, being able to replace that or repair that is going to be very difficult. It is built into that wall there. And no matter how you put that in there, it is going, you can see a little crack at the bottom there. This is facing the public side. They're still working out how they're going to fix that. There are some lighting fixtures that have been removed or were inoperable. I'm not sure what they plan to do moving forward from there other than replacing the lighting fixture, but we'll be having a conversation with them when they do that, hopefully before they do that. Also, there's a window that was broken up here that is in need of replacing. Which also brings me to all the other properties that have similar home maintenance things where the property itself looks well maintained, looks beautiful from the outside, but there are often one or two things that fall under maintenance versus restoration work that needs to be done. And this is a compilation of either retaining wall failures or old wiring that it's been indicated that they would be updating, aluminum windows that need to be made into a wood trim window, lilting retaining walls, and so on. So we'll be following up with them the next time. And a slight correction in the report. I had a typo where I said there was no plaque observed, and that is not the case. There is indeed a plaque on this site. It's on the right side. So next steps, the city anticipates continuing to work with property owners to update outdated maintenance plans, things that property owners may want to consider doing in the future. One thing that's been really nice from my end is the city had kind of lagged on reaching out to each of these property owners and doing these inspections. And I really feel as though the relationship between the city and property owners has been improved through this. And it's really exciting to hang out with a property owner who's excited and passionate about their historic property and what they've done on the site. And they get kind of giddy saying, hey, we repainted this trim over here and it looks gorgeous. Additionally, another next step is to complete next year's annual inspections. The flyer that went out with the QR code was amazingly successful, and we will definitely be doing that for the next round. This time we only used it on the ones that we hadn't been able to get a hold of. Next year it's going out to everybody. Really saved a headache. And prepare follow-up inspection report for the end of 2025. So hopefully you'll get another update at the end of next year. Yeah, especially trying to highlight the ones that have done improvements or changes or whatever has happened of significance over the past year. With that, that concludes staff's presentation. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Do we have any questions? Okay.
I just want to really compliment you, Matthew. I've been on this commission for 8 or 9 years now, something like that. And it was always a big concern in terms of we weren't following through. And the fact that you've done this now twice has been really wonderful. This is our second report. And it has really given us a sense of progress and communication with property owners that we didn't have before. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My pleasure. It's been enjoyable, other than the frustrations of getting a hold of people. But really cool once you get there.
So I have several questions. I hope it's okay. So the first question is, what leverage do you have for older buildings that did not have a schedule like the newer ones now? And does it even matter if you don't have like that schedule?
Levi may be able to best answer that question.
Sure. Excellent question. So the language in the actual contracts, they're contracted to maintain the properties in accordance with the adopted historic preservation report. So even though those older contracts don't actually include timeframes, and even the newer ones actually, they have timeframes, but obviously these are historic buildings, so it's likely these elements that are being replaced or restored will have multiple lives even after the contract. So that's a great question, and they're required to maintain in accordance with the report in perpetuity as long as that contract is in effect. So essentially, on some of those older properties, if Matthew was to go out and conduct an inspection and identify that there was something that was now in disrepair or in need of restoration, that's included as in that preservation report. We can then flag that, notify the owner, and let them know that needs to be maintained to uphold, to remain not in breach of contract, essentially.
Okay, so basically, if your department goes whenever they want to go, if they see it, that brings the, I guess, I don't want to say the hammer of the contract, but that triggers.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. That's the moment in which we would identify that there's a deficiency or some type of conflict with the contract, and then obviously allow them to correct that in due time before we would take any
Yeah, absolutely.
penalties or anything like that.
May I continue?
Yes.
Okay. What's the process to start a contract cancellation? In other words, who determines that it's in breach?
Sure. So there's two kind of ways that this happens, and that's so there's cancellation and there's a notice of non-renewal. So there's it's dependent on the case, but essentially, if the city and this commission, and then ultimately council, because council obviously is who is the final say in entering into these contracts. But before any of that, council made any of that decision, they were also come before this commission to get a recommendation. But basically, if city staff identified or had thought that a party was in breach of their contract, and obviously we've worked with them in trying to bring them into compliance, but they're unwilling to do so or unable to do so, we would bring it before this commission to make a recommendation on enforcement, and whether that would be notice of non-renewal. So it's a kind of a 10-year rolling contract that these are approved under. So a notice of non-renewal will basically say that it would get recorded that the contract will no longer auto renewal. So it would fade out over the next 9 years. And then the cancellation is more immediate. So that would probably get recorded and then cancel into the next calendar year once recorded with the county. There are monetary, financial penalties associated with those due to the tax implications that the contract has. But that's kind of case by case, depending on the actual property and what the taxes are.
Okay. When you said council, do you mean city council or
City council, that's correct.
Meaning the city council or the attorney for the city?
The city council,
gotcha.
yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. So you had two properties that were no inspect. Does that mean that they ignored your inspection notice?
It means that we have sent multiple mailers to them.
Mhm.
We sent that postcard to them.
Mhm.
Did not hear anything back. Some properties are behind gates, and so going and
Mhm.
knocking on the door is maybe not possible.
Yeah, so those are areas where we have reached out. We made multiple attempts to contact them to schedule an inspection. However, they failed to schedule the inspection in this calendar year.
And when we send the notice, it goes to both the property itself and also the owner who may not
Mhm.
live there. We use the county records for property owner. And
So it could be an LLC in San Francisco, or it could be somebody owning from San Francisco. So that actually sparked a couple of other questions. Do you have authority to go in if they keep ignoring you?
Authority to enter the property?
Yes.
No. So we would not have the right of entry. You can only do that. City only has the authority to do that under health and safety concerns. So we would not have the ability for authoritative right of entry. What we would do in those instances, we'll just use these as an example, the two that we have that failed to schedule an inspection this calendar year. We'll continue to work with them over the next calendar year to schedule an inspection. And after another year of failed inspection where we're unable to assess whether or not they're maintaining the property in accordance with their plan, we would bring it before this commission to make a decision on whether or not we should, you would recommend moving into an enforcement path.
So they get 2 years basically of ignoring the.
We don't have a formal policy, actually, so that's just kind of been an informal approach that staff has taken at this point. Obviously, if this commission feels differently, we can bring these things, these to the commission faster than that. Just given the time frame that these Mills Act contracts run for, and the time frame in which most of the maintenance plans allow for the work to be done over a multi-year period. Staff felt it might be a little bit rash to after 1 year of not inspecting, to bring them before this commission. And yeah, that was where we landed.
So theoretically, and I'm not talking about these two specific ones, and I understand health and safety is, not in my opinion, but I get it, is more important than history. Say you see a property and there's a spigot or something hitting the side of the property, and that's going to cause irreparable damage or very deep or very serious damage to the property. You have no way of, if they're ignoring you, say.
Of entering the property, no. We would just have to continually, we would obviously in an instance like that, try very hard to get in contact with whoever the occupant is or the property owner. But yeah, enforcement it would could potentially become a code enforcement issue, but even that doesn't necessarily give us the right of entry.
I'll also note the contract, the property owners are required to allow for a city inspection once per year. So if you are not allowing it, then you are in breach of contract, and then we can go into that. But if we can't get a hold of them, we can't.
But yeah,
Well, I
even
would-
regardless of contact, you can bring in the enforcement path. I mean, so
Because I would consider ignoring you a breach of contract, because when you enter into a contract, you have an address to be served, to be notified, and if they're not talking to you, they're in breach of the contract. But I get it. We don't want to make enemies. We want people to preserve the property, which leads me to my next question. And pardon me, my memory is horrible. I know I've been on the commission for a couple of years, but in the last 5 years, have we ever canceled a contract? I remember maybe a non-renewal, but did we actually bring a property owner and say, we're canceling your contract for one of the, usually it's destruction by neglect. I don't know if that's a legal term. That's how I see it. But have we done that in the past, say, 5 years?
We have not.
Okay.
We have
10 years, maybe?
We have not. The city has not yet canceled a contract.
Okay.
However, we have discussed with people that they are at risk of that, and the language gets stronger and stronger each time we talk.
I'll promise I'm almost done. Do we find out as a commission when that's happening? When somebody got a letter and say, you need to fix it, and they didn't fix it, and then level 2, level 3, is there at some point where we find out?
So one thing about the annual reports is that we're building a paper trail. Technically, there are a number of properties that have not completed tasks. There are outstanding things that need to be done. And even a retaining wall with a crack in it, it needs to be repaired. It's supposed to be repaired. It starts to become under city discretion as to how long that crack remains there. But at least we have, at this point, at least 2 years worth of data that.
And look, I get it. People might not have the money at the time. They might have other priorities. I'm talking about repairs that need to be done to preserve the integrity of the property. I'm not saying, yes, painting is important, but maybe it can wait. Somebody that waited more than 8 years to paint their house, I get it. Retaining wall, that doesn't seem like it's affecting the structure and doesn't seem unsafe. It looks unsightly, but I get it. What I'm talking about is actual repairs that might put in jeopardy the property.
And especially those that have not yet done electrical upgrade. Those that still
For
have
example, knob and tube
wiring.
Mhm.
yeah, so a lot of this goes back to as we review new contracts, it goes back to emphasize how much importance we need to be looking at the timeframes in which we're establishing for these tasks to be completed. And I think it also highlights the seriousness in which everyone, staff and this commission included, should be reviewing these types of contracts. They do have pretty significant financial implications, both at the time of entering, and then also if one does have to be canceled, it's a pretty considerable financial implication. So to your point, Commissioner Rodriguez, it's if it's financially burdening to do the work on the house, it would be even more financially burdening to cancel the contract.
For them.
So that's why it needs to be a very serious consideration when we enter into new contracts for properties, and feeling comfortable that property owners are able to maintain the properties in accordance with the plan that's being adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Julie.
Thanks. And thank you for the presentation. Very helpful, very informative. Just a couple questions and points. What is a process? Is there a process set up, or is there an avenue for modifications to the maintenance plan? You know, things change over time, other issues come up with houses. How is that resolved, or how is that dealt with?
Yeah, so the actual updating of the maintenance plans from staff's end, we're considering that our to-do for the next year, figuring out exactly how those maintenance plans will be updated. Because for the past 2 years, we've been relying on the recorded ones with the county.
Yeah.
In the inspections outside of updating the maintenance plans, one of the questions I always ask is, have there been any major things that have happened this year? Was there a water break? Was there something where you had to allocate money to this versus working on this? Especially if something has not been done yet. So that's been marked down in the maintenance plans on the worksheets there.
It'd be great to have a process, like clearly spelled out. I'm sure for you, because my next question is going to be a little bit.
Absolutely.
I mean, and even a process for when, you know, these properties sell, and for the new homeowner to kind of, you know, they're buying this property with a certain zoning and a maintenance plan, but just to have kind of a review process set up to work with you all on that. And then the second one, I think, is, you already touched on it, is consistency with these plans. And I know that's, I think we talked before of, that's one of your intentions, to try to make future maintenance plans a little bit more consistent, but it would be great to get clarity on some of the topics, because I see a lot of variety of what, and what's, you know, what's allowed in the maintenance plan and what's not. You know, garden maintenance, I see a lot of, you know, things that are not necessarily associated to the integrity of, you know, what the contract is.
Bathroom remodels.
Yeah, bathroom remodels. Yeah. I mean, so it would just be, I think it behooves us to, as a commission, to kind of really read every single line item. And the same thing with costs. I mean, personal experience, we're putting down numbers. I mean, everybody's all over the place. When you see painting for $10,000 and you see painting for $30,000. I mean, of course, houses have different requirements and sizes, but I mean, I think we need to be a little bit more cognizant when we're reviewing these things, kind of moving forward, to make sure that we're at least encouraging consistency and something that people can understand for new applicants.
If I may speak from myself, I think it would be awesome to have some sort of electronic-based, annually updated plan where somebody can go in and say, I've done this, 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 and this, a place to attach photos, and all of that be downloaded. In terms of that becoming reality anytime soon, we'll see. But yes, I think it would help with uniformity. I think everybody having a similar worksheet, a similar update. We need to talk with legal about how those things can be recorded and part of the contracts, but I would like some uniformity as well.
Yeah, so that kind of would dovetail. I know that we're talking about the maintenance, but how that folds into, like, what is the current situation for new Mills Act applications in the city? And I know that we have a report coming up, Levi, from you in a couple of minutes, but I don't know, that would be good to hear about too.
Of course. Yeah, and I think it actually, it's a perfect segue from the points that you were making about consistency. The Mills Act, the ordinance that brought the city's Mills Act program into effect in the early 2000s is, quite dated at this point in time, and it was pretty limited on the structure of the program, the specific parameters and requirements of the program at that time. So we have, and that has been that ordinance has not been amended once since the adoption of the program. So it's definitely our intention once and we do have, and just to give you guys an update on where that's at, the fiscal analysis is being prepared for the Mills Act program. Staff received a preliminary draft of that last week, so it's being internally reviewed for accuracy. And once we have that review complete, we'll be bringing it before this commission in the next couple of months. And then for essentially both for you all to receive the report, but then to also make recommendations on potential changes to the program. Those recommendations would be forwarded to the city council, who will also be receiving a report and would be entertaining modifications or amendments to the program. So it's great. This is a great primer for everyone to be thinking about. If you have ideas or things where the program can be improved, obviously staff will be also presenting some recommendations to this commission on where we think the program could be built out a little bit more, and where specificity can be applied, and more policies to apply consistency to how the program is implemented. But yeah, so it's a great time to be thinking about that. And then obviously with the fiscal analysis, that will also probably shape a lot of some of your opinions and recommendations as well.
So do you envision kind of a multi-meeting process of us learning about what the fiscal, implications and situation, and then a follow-up meeting for more improvements and recommendation?
That's likely what we'll do. If not, it would be a regularly scheduled meeting in which you would receive the report for the fiscal analysis, and then maybe we'd set up some type of workshop or special meeting
great.
for the actual, if we want to entertain recommendations to the changes to the program.
So, Kathy, do you have any?
No, I'm okay.
Carol?
Yeah, I just was wondering, looking through if we have a template or something, because when I looked at some of these, where a water heater, every 10 years, well, we all have water heaters then that seems to be in the garden maintenance.
It's just
It's
random.
just a regular, if you own a home, that's what you do. So, and looking back at the very early ones where they were kind of scribbled on the backs of envelopes, almost, that we could not allow some of that. And I don't know, when you go, if they say, oh, we put in a new water heater, and you're supposed to say, good homeowner, you have hot water, or if you're looking around at the something that's substantial like foundations.
Yeah, it does vary wildly. And I adhere to the maintenance plan. If it says water heater,
You tell them good boy, and
I've learned more about, honestly, water heaters, where they're at, where they're stored, old looking ones versus new looking ones, because it is a very popular thing to have on these maintenance plans. Probably 10 or 12 of them are update water heater, or from gas to electric, or whatever it happens to be. And then we open the side of the house and point at it, and it does look shinier and great, and move forward. Foundation improvements, also looking under the house, that 2-foot crawl space, and seeing, those are new pieces of wood holding up versus an old piece of wood holding it up.
it just seems that there's more substantial, that sometimes people are inflating their maintenance schedule with things like garden maintenance and water heaters.
And there are multiple plans that include proposed changes to the structure, either interior or exterior, that they're anticipating doing, and then they don't, and then they didn't end up doing that addition, even though they included it on the plan and was not required of the historic preservation plan. It is technically still part of the contract, and it's flagged as not being done, even if there's a whole new homeowner who now has this plan from a previous owner where They wanted to put a second sink upstairs and they didn't. And the Mills Act doesn't even really care about the interior of these homes as much as it does the exterior. So it is quite the conundrum. And I will say some staff interpretation has been made on some of those cases as to whether it's being considered maintaining versus outstanding things. Not necessarily sure if they should be for the record.
Yeah, and
But
I'll just chime in. So to your point, Commissioner O'Neill, I think that would be something that, whenever this commission is considering possible recommendations to modify the program, adding some standardized, some standards to what can be included in the maintenance plans may be something that this commission wants to consider. If we want to add some language that specifies, features that aid, that are directly correlated to the restoration of the historical features of the property or structural, features, we can fine tune that. But that's something to be thinking about if we want to standardize what can be included and maybe put some parameters around that.
That's a great, I mean, we can be thinking about, and I look at this as the maturing
Oh,
of the program. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That we've come a long
Growth.
way, growth, that's another good one. I have one little tiny question, so that the broken tile on the Marsh building, if that's a historic tile and you now want them to replace it, how do you, if that's historic and part of the fabric of the Marsh building?
So it could be replaced and still meet the SOI standards. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a tile that's, produced from that era. It can be produced of the same material or representative of that material and still be a historically accepted material.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
It's kind of like how Matthew pointed out, they had the stack of the blue roofing tiles.
yeah,
Those are not from the era in which the building was constructed, but they are constructed either of the same material of a like. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. This
I will
this
get
is
you, I
wonderful.
Yes,
promise,
yes.
but I have a question. So if a property has a Mills Act and it gets sold, then the new owner is still under that Mills Act?
yes,
That's correct.
And if they decide to pull out, then they'd have to pay the penalties and.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. So once you acquire a property with Mills Act contract, the contract is in place.
Okay, great. That was all I had.
Let's see, 'cause
Okay,
I've been
Geraldine.
asking-
Hi, again, and I think I'm singing the same song here. I've been in it long enough to know that without those reports that you were doing, we didn't have a way of helping people be compliant. So all of this is new in the maturation of this program. So having these reports, we can support any compliance by saying, for the last 3 years, this hasn't been fixed, or we haven't been able to get in touch with you. It really builds our ability to move forward with any further direction. And the biggest compliance hammer we have is the continuation of the tax benefit. And we don't necessarily go into their house, but we are connected to the outside. There isn't a house that we've given historic status to in terms of Mills Act that has a feature on the inside that made it Mills Act. They're all outside features that I know of. We looked into this once before and we couldn't identify any, so I'm going back to that. I also think over time, in terms of reaching out to people, you could have people that were very vital, healthy people that went into this and they've matured in their own houses and now they've aged and maybe their ability to take on a big repair project is different. And we have to think of how to work with the individual citizens we have in these properties as they age and what kind of support we give them or how we help guide that process. I just want us to see, once you start a process, what the implications could be with an aging population in those properties. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
I promise to be quick, yes. So following up on what Commissioner Barlow and you asked and you stated, when you're talking about the report on financial implications, are you talking about the cost to the city managing the program or the cost in, I don't want to say lost taxes, I would say reduced taxes and the benefit to the community for those reduced taxes, for both?
It'll be both, actually. So it's a great question. So yes, it'll do, it's a pretty in-depth analysis at both what the impacts financially to the city are in terms of processing these types of applications, as just kind of background information to better fill out what the overall fiscal impact to the city at large is. So I mean, it is lost tax revenue. I mean, it's these properties go under contract for a reduced tax rate. So that's lost tax revenue that is goes to the county, and then I think the city gets a percentage of that amount. So that number goes down. But of course, that's all to be considered in tandem with the public benefit of preserving historic structures.
Absolutely.
So it takes a very holistic approach of pretty much where all the money's going from every side of this, and then just kind of puts it all in one place for everyone to.
Absolutely, because they have the same right to use police, they have the same right to use fire, they have the same roads, but they're paying less. But how you quantify happiness of seeing, I mean, Matthew was elated in seeing a pretty building. I'm too, by the way, and just looking at these remodels. So that's what I was curious. I'm glad you're going to cover both. The other question is, do we have demographic data of the direct beneficiaries of the contract? I know we're all beneficiaries, but I'm talking about the property owners.
That's a great question as well, and that's also included in the analysis. So it does, so it kind of pulls all that data of, gives us the data of who these people are that are going under contracts, establishes if there are any trends that we're seeing it'll establish those and identify those just as discussion points for this commission.
Who's being left out, who we can
Absolutely.
do outreach to and things like that. Okay, perfect. And then I will say, just telegraphing it, and I know I'm not the only one, current and previous commissioners, I'm very interested in discussing destruction by neglect and having consequences for that. I know we're talking about the growth or the maturation of the program. That's something that I would be really interested in discussing. But with that comes what Commissioner Barlow said is because of due process, the rules have to be clear. The rules have to be the same for everyone. So to the extent that we can eliminate discretion, I think any action we take here, and if the city council deems it appropriate and confirms it, we would have a better chance of it surviving any legal challenge if we have those documents or policies that you can look up on the internet, for example.
I would agree.
And then lastly, thank you very much. It's a great report. As you can see, this is one that interested me
Never
very
get a
much. I'm
lawyer
sorry.
started.
I'm sorry. All right, shut up.
Yeah.
Unless I hear something that piques my interest, I can't promise. Yes, that's it.
Carol, you go first.
So in the cities looking at the fiscal ramifications, are they looking at the benefits to the community of having historic properties? I read a study from San Diego probably 20 years ago where they studied historic properties and the property values of the properties around the historic property, and they were all higher because of the historic. So is that being taken into account also?
So I'm not sure how much analysis has been done as far as what the property value impacts are on surrounding properties beyond the actual properties under contract. Like I said, obviously the council, even whenever they directed us to prepare the study, was very clear that they do see a significant public benefit in maintaining historic properties. And they were very clear on that. So I think that's definitely in the forefront of the conversation.
And without Zillowing every property, but I'm guessing there are numbers that you could go
Sure.
to.
I think the
for-
challenge with
yeah.
that is that the program was adopted in 2000, and I think you'll see that property values across the board have significantly increased
Oh,
in the
I
last
meant
2 decades.
Percentage wise, maybe.
I
in
think it would
the-
be difficult to discern how much is due to a property under, falling under a Mills Act contract versus just real estate increases.
Carolyn.
Sorry. My question is maybe something for staff. When we talk about historic properties, we're talking about these properties, but we also have an interest in properties that are even close at hand here among in the city property that are older properties that aren't always being maintained and some a little bit neglected, at least it appears so on the outside. I've had questions from the public that ask about some of the properties, you know, near our parking lot or on our parking lot that are city, and some are just right almost, you know, they're privately owned, but they're close. And if we do have standards and we don't want to see potentially historic or aged properties just fall apart by neglect, we have to also look at how we're taking care of our own properties in the city and in, you know, try to have an eye on that, I think, for the future. Another issue that came up yesterday in a meeting is the signs that designate historic properties. And if we have an interest in some of those signs, I've heard are inappropriately placed. Maybe they were in a sidewalk and they should be some other place. And I'm wondering if we're looking at the historic signs that are in the city and looking at their maintenance and give that some thought. And I don't know if that's we do talk about signs in the commission, this commission, but it may not be our job to do it. It may be a different job, but I'm thinking that some of those signs look like they need to be maintained at this point too. And I know we're coming off of the kind of a recession, dealing from a recession of maybe income, not as much income after COVID, and trying to build up our resources. But it's something to think about, you know, maintaining and caring for properties, and also identifying and kind of showing where some of those public properties are, and trying to take care of them. We're trying to figure out what to do about signage at Casa Serrano. So some of the other historic properties probably have aging signs also. And if there's a standard for that, or if the city is a part of it because of the location of the signs, that's something to think about in the future.
Great point.
Mhm. Anything else from anyone? William, do you have anything? No? Okay. Great. So do we need to make a motion on accepting this or anything, or?
Nope, just receive the report.
Great report. That was very
yes.
thorough.
Thank you,
Yes.
Matthew.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the
Mhm.
hard work.
It is a public appearance item, so we can open it up to see if we have anyone that wants to comment on the item.
There are no attendees online.
What?
Well,
I talk too much.
Great job.
They all started dropping
Yes.
off.
Okay, so commission comments, any commission comments?
I have a question that maybe the city could ask State Parks about the First Theater. It closed New Year's Eve, 1999. We are now midway through 2024, almost 25 years, and it still is not open. So if somebody besides me could ask State Parks, what's going on? Do you have a plan?
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely check in with our contacts there and see if
I
we can
like
get
to
a
ask this
status.
question every 10 years or
Yeah.
so. and-
It's appropriate. We had a grand opening and there was
Yeah,
a
and
big
then-
celebration and
Recently, right?
people
And
were there.
then-
It was just
yeah.
in the fall.
Mhm.
last
yeah,
year.
I was there with you.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
really lovely, and the anticipation was there would be theater in it and
Yep,
things were
Yep,
moving forward. but
yep.
I know
Yeah.
that it was open during Christmas in the Adobes.
Yeah.
I know it's part of the
Yeah.
tour. So now
Yeah.
it's since been reclosed.
State budget.
It's not, let's put it this way, it's not open.
Open,
It hasn't
open.
been closed, but it's not.
Sure. We'll check into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anything else from the commissioners?
We have the report on the back.
Yeah,
Oh,
the upcoming.
oh man, after
events.
100 and some
Yeah,
pages.
I'm getting to that. Okay, so next is the any staff reports.
Yeah, so just what was included in your agenda packet there, just some things that maybe are tentatively scheduled for the September 12th meeting, and then some upcoming historical and cultural events. I think there's like a car thing happening next week or something.
What is the repointing for Colton Hall?
Sure, that's restoration work that has to do with the masonry and the stonework there.
Oh, thank you.
So it's yeah, that's possibly September 12th. That's obviously a city project, being that that's a city-owned property. So it'll just be dependent on whether or not our internal team has it ready.
I wanted to put one more thing out.
Carol.
Point Sur Naval Facilities having an open house on this Sunday, I think it's September 1st. So you get to walk around on your own. Linda will be parking cars. She'll be
Oh.
going over there.
How
So
do we go there? Just so-
you drive down the coast.
Yeah, you don't have to make a
And when you hit the
reservation.
big
No, it's
rock, you,
First come, first
Go-
served.
yeah.
November 1st, I mean. not
yeah, September
September
1st
1st.
at noon for 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
When you hit the closure, you've gone too far.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And don't stay into the nighttime hours because you'll
That's
be
right.
stuck down there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And since we're talking about houses, Carmel Heritage is having a house tour on Sunday, September 8th. We are celebrating the centennial of Hugh Comstock, the fairy tale cottages. We have 5 on the tour, including Hansel and Gretel, the first ones. So it should be, it's a big event. The city council the other day made a proclamation and everything about this. So that's one thing. And then October 5th and 6th at Stanton Center, there's a Joe Mora gathering. It's quite a symposium and different events, some free, some not. And that's, well, through History and Art, Monterey History and Art. Geraldine, do you want to add to
Probably
that?
the biggest thing that happens on the wharf
Oh, yes.
is the Festa Italia, the second weekend of September, and we don't have that on here. It, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it fills the whole plaza, all of those days, and is a huge event, and everybody feels like they're Italian that weekend, and it's really a big celebration of music and food and dancing and just a really great time to go down and enjoy being in Monterey, and there's something for everybody. So it's very welcoming. Everyone should come.
Best cannoli I ever had.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or the, what do you call
Anything else?
arancini?
Yeah.
Arancini, yeah, you
Yes.
can't even find arancini in restaurants.
Oh, and the
They're there.
calamari, they give a lot of the calamari, I've always noticed.
Until the food's a big deal, but also music all day long.
Yes. Geraldine will
it's
be
a lot of fun.
dancing.
Right, yeah. Are we done?
Fun.
Okay, I adjourn this meeting.